Understand one particular thing. When we talk about the persuasion, when we talk about how Shaytan works, how Shaytan operates, there's something that our scholars have said, have written about. Shaytan is more experienced than any of us. Shaytan is just more cunning and sharp than any of us. It's phrased in such a way to catch your attention, but there's a certain truth and reality to it. He's been playing this game for a very long time. He's a veteran. So what does he do? He's got the tricks. And so when you are praying 5 times a day, Shaytan will not come to you and say, do not pray. Because you, as somebody who has some semblance of awareness and cognizance and awareness, are not going to abandon prayer. Because you'll be like, well, that's ludicrous. That's obviously ridiculous. Why would I ever do that? So that's not how he's going to approach you. How he's going to approach you is he's going to say, look, I know that it's time for Dhuhr right now. But let's be honest, you've been here since 10 a.m. You're kind of tired, you're getting a little sleepy, started to doze off in the last session. And after Dhuhr, there's more sessions. Sheikh Yasser will be with us after Dhuhr. You really want to pay attention. You came particularly to listen to the Sheikh. So what should you do right now? You should go and get some coffee. Now it just so happens that the little coffee place that they have inside the hotel has a line of 300 Al-Maghrib people at it. Right? Because everyone's thinking the same thing. Shaitan's busy. So now you go, you're going to walk over to the parking garage, you're going to get in your car, you're going to pull out your car and you're going to drive out over to the mall. And then you're going to go get your coffee, and then you're going to come back, and now what happens? They are already done praying Dhuhr. And then you're going to say, well, but the session already started. This was the session that I've been waiting for all day long. So you know what? Let me just go, just sit in the session, and then you can pray afterwards. So now you're going to come and sit down in the session. And then that session will finish, and the next session will start and be like, oh, this is the other session I was waiting for. And that session will finish and you'll just start to think like, oh yeah, man, I better hurry up and pray my Dhuhr. And then that brother, right? Like it's his fault, right? He's going to get up here on the stage and make the adhan for Asr. And you'll be looking at him like, I can't believe you would do that to me. He did it. It's his fault. Right? So now what happened? Asr's here. And without overwhelming anyone here too much, and I honestly mean this, sincerely mean this. Please forgive me. I apologize if this does seem very heavy to just kind of mention, but it's the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam talks about, there's a more specific narration about Asr, and then there's a more general narration about any prayer. Man fatathu salatun, faka'annama wutira maluhu wa ahluhu. As somebody who just lets a prayer just slip through. Wasn't sick, wasn't ill, wasn't stuck, wasn't trapped, but somebody who just kind of lets a prayer, a salah, just slip through. Just loses it like that. Because it just wasn't important enough. The Prophet ﷺ says that such a tragedy has befallen that person. But maybe that person doesn't realize that if that person was to realize the scope of this tragedy, it'd be a greater tragedy than losing all your wealth and all your family. Right? We hear about natural disasters all the time. We live in Tornado Alley or whatever. When a tornado touches down, and where there was a home, it just completely just vanishes and there's nothing but just debris left afterwards. Think about the scope of that tragedy. One family member from that family who had maybe gone to work or gone out comes back to just find nothing but just debris of what used to be their family and their life. Think about what that level of that person's grief is. And now understand and realize the Prophet ﷺ is saying that the tragedy that's just befallen this guy that I was telling you about is greater than that. That's how Shaytan operates. Now there's guilt, which on an individual level can be helpful, but Shaytan now further is going to turn that knife. And that guilt will become despair. And that despair will become frustration. And that frustration will eventually, very unfortunately, devolve, will rot, will fester until it becomes a full-scale crisis of faith. What kind of a religion puts that type of pressure on you? What kind of a God makes these types of demands of you? And then God forbid, wal-'ayadhu billah, that person will say, well, I want nothing to do with such a religion or such a God. You see this, the trajectory and how terrible it was. This is how Shaytan operates. So that's why we always have to be on guard. That's where taqwa comes in. Consciousness, awareness, diligence, cognizance. Being alert, always.